Hi, this is Dave White from Sportsman's Emporium. I'm going to talk a little bit today. I'm going to tie a little fly, a nymph fly that will be used for trout, and then I'm going to just talk about using dubbing and using your fingers to spin on the dubbing instead of using a dubbing tool, which takes a couple steps. And this, if you're like me, you fish your flies. I like to tie pretty quick for my commonly used trout flies because I know eventually I'm going to lose them on the rocks and on fish. So I don't really take a whole lot of time to tie, you know, my standard little nymph patterns. I kind of like to hurry through them. And I know a lot of other people feel the same, and I've got questions about, well, how do I spin dubbing on proper without a dubbing tool? Because the dubbing tool does take a lot of extra time. So that's what we're going to do today. And I've already started this fly, and it's just a little generic bead head nymph, and I put the bead on and started my thread, and I'm going to go ahead and, you know, advance my thread to the back of the hook. And this is assuming you know a little bit about the very basics of fly tying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use two different types of dubbing. I'm going to use basically it's a rabbit dubbing from Spirit River. It's a natural rabbit fur, and it's a gray color, like a gray tan. And then there's a mottled peacock blend of dubbing that just has some different colors in it, a little sparkle. It has some greens and even a little bit of purples and yellows and black. So it's a little bit of a mottled color, and that gives me the head of the fly. So what I'm going to do is this nymph is just nothing but dubbing and a bead head on the front of it. So I'm going to start and dubbing this thing. I'm going to pull just a little bit out and go ahead and get it ready. Put it right here in front of me on the table. And then I'm going to take my dubbing wax. And this is the key to dubbing with your fingers and doing it right and getting your dubbing to stick. I'm going to take this dubbing wax, get a little bit out of the container here, and I'm going to cover my thread with it really good. So I got a nice sticky wax base on my thread. And then I'm going to take just a little bit at first of the dubbing here, and I'm going to begin to spin it on here with my fingers and just kind of spin it and roll it around the thread until it adheses itself to the thread. And I like to put on just a little bit at a time so I can build my body taper where it would be a thinner body at the back of the hook and a little bit fatter towards the head. So what I'll do is shorten up my thread here, and I've got this started, and I'm just going to go ahead and give it a couple wraps to lock it down, and I'm going to continue to kind of pull pressure down to tighten this up. Sometimes it'll slide up and it'll get bulky, and as you're tying, you just kind of pull it down as you need. And right now it's not pulling down, but as you can see, I'm taking a couple more wraps as I go to build a tapered body. And it's really not that hard. Like I say, it's a little easier than a dubbing tool, and it saves some time, especially I think if you're like me, my commonly used flies, I try not to spend a lot of time on them because I know I'm going to lose them. As a fly fisherman, eventually you're going to lose your flies in the trees and on rocks, and that's all part of it. So I'm going to continue to taper this body up and make it a little bit thicker as I go up the hook and continue to spin this dubbing on with my fingers. It's that easy. And you can do, when you get used to this, you can really do these flies really fast. And there it kind of bunched out on me at the end. So I'm going to unwrap that and spin it back on to lock that down. Okay, now I got my gray body, and I want to put a little green head on it. This sort of looks like a thorax and a head. So I'm going to do the same thing I did. It's just a little bit different blend of dubbing and a different color. I'm going to put the wax on my thread, spin this, and kind of pull up towards the hook and thin it out because I don't want it to be too thick on there. So now I'm going to start this. I got one wrap that kind of locks it down, and I'm going to tighten it up again. So now I'm going to build up this head. Now the head, is going to have a little more bulk on it than the body, because I want it to kind of stick out and look a little buggy, look like there could be even a little leg tentacles sticking out of there. And I think that's a good way to do it to make your flies appealing to fish. And a couple more wraps with this. And now what I got is a little too much dubbing. You know, I really don't need any more on my hook, but I still have some on my thread. So what I'm going to do is just kind of start to pull that down in a way, and you'll still have a little bit on there, but I'll just pull those fibers down off of there, and they'll start to separate away from the pack. That way it doesn't bulk up on me really bad at the end of the fly. Okay, so that's pretty much a basic little nymph. That's kind of a generic, almost a caddis fly, just a two-tone dubbing nymph, basically for the purpose of teaching how to dub. Now, more often than not, I would add a gold ribbing up here, but otherwise, I tied this similar pattern in a bunch of different colors, and it always seems to work really well. Now I'm going to use a whip finishing tool and finish the fly, and it's done. Well, I'm going to use a half hitch tool. I'm going to run around that, pull it down, nice and snug, come up with my scissors, cut my thread, and there's the fly. And that's just a standard little dubbing nymph fly.